everybody, welcome to Shot 3 from the Tee podcast. I am your host for this episode number 8, Jason Roslin. I'm going to be joined later by Matt Jones to go over a little of the statistical segment, a little bit of the in-depth stats that I may not get into or I may not cover in my model, but are specific to this week's golf course, and we've been on a nice little run there, so stay tuned for that. That comes up at the end of this segment, probably about 10, maybe 12 minutes from now, depending on how quickly I can talk. And those of you that know me, I'm from Rhode Island originally, New England, so certainly my voice and my speed of talking can certainly speed up pretty quickly. Okay, so let's dive right in. The first segment of this podcast is to review the prices that I put out from last week. Last night. I had Webb Simpson at 11.3, Matt Kuchar at 11, Charles Howell 10.8, Scotty Scheffler 10.4, Adam Hadwin 10K. Those were my 5. Well, I got 3 of 5 at least right. Maybe fairly obvious there. Webb Simpson correct at the top of the board, so 1 for 1 there. Billy Horschel, though, comes next at 11, then Kuchar, then Howell at 10.4, Kuchar at 10.6, and the highly owned Harris English from 8.6 to 10K this week rounds out the top 5. Scotty Scheffler actually down at 9,200, so maybe I was a little overzealous there. Adam Hadwin is, I believe he's number 7 on the board, sneaking in, though, at number 6, in between Harris English and Adam Hadwin is Kevin Kisner. Didn't mention maybe they would go with Kisner, but I thought they would price Hadwin over Kisner. They did not, maybe due to Kisner being a past champion. Regardless, 3 of 5. 1 in the correct position, not the correct salary. I didn't get any of the salaries right, except for I got the salary right for the 4th and 5th place guy, just not the right guy. So, I don't know, maybe a B, C, B minus, C plus, something like that for the week. All right, let's learn about the field a little bit more in depth. The sponsors exemptions playing in this week, always fun to review these. Drew Love gets his yearly sponsor exemption at the RSM Classic. He grew up in the area, and his dad, basically, he is the host of the event, so there's no chance that Drew's not getting a sponsor exemption into almost every single RSM Classic that Davis Love is at least running. Next guy, Grayson Sigg. This guy is a 24-year-old at Augusta, it looks like, so from Georgia, another Georgia guy. Came in 9th in the order of merit. In his in the order of merit on the Mackenzie Tour last year, that qualifies him for the Korn Ferry Tour qualifying tournament. That's the 4-round event coming up in the second week of December, where I believe it's about 120 golfers go out and compete for 4 rounds. The top 40 guarantee themselves some status on the Korn Ferry Tour, and you get inside the top 10, it's better, and then if you win, it is full status. So interesting there. And then I believe there's another qualification, maybe top 70 or something in that range. So Grayson Sigg gets a sponsor exemption into this week. Chad Campbell, old touring pro. You probably recognize him from a couple of years ago. He doesn't have really any status, but gets a start this week. Akshay Bhatia gets one of his final 4 sponsors exemptions. Let's see if this might be the week for the kid to make his first cut as a professional. Next one, William Gordon. William Gordon, we highlighted last week. He was just graduated college and had a very good collegiate career. Had been playing well, too, throughout his professional starts that he had at least been given. And ended up making the cut last week. So, nothing fantastic, but still made the cut last week. And something to look forward to this week, maybe playing a little bit closer to home. William Gordon gets his 2nd straight sponsors exemption. Next guy on my list is Davis Riley. Davis Riley is a 22-year-old from Mississippi. He ranked 70th last year on the Korn Ferry Tour. I believe by my calculation that should give him status. So just quickly on William Gordon, I forgot. He went to Vanderbilt. He was ranked 9th in the world as an amateur. Brought that up last week. He's been playing on a couple of starts on the Canada Tour, Korn Ferry Tour. Had made a bunch of cuts. So interesting to see William Gordon. Maybe another chance for him to rack up another paycheck and keep earning that money. Davis Riley now finishing off on him, a 22-year-old from Mississippi, 70th on the Korn Ferry Tour last year. I believe that gives him status. And last but not least in the sponsors exemptions, believe it or not, there aren't that many. Davis Thompson. And Davis is a junior at Georgia from St. Simon's Island, so right down the road. Finished off the fall season, which is just now, with a scoring average of 69.57 with, according to the website at Georgia there, 15 rounds in the 60s. So at least playing well in the college ranks and at the college courses certainly doesn't mean it's going to translate into the PGA Tour success. But still, nonetheless, Davis Thompson is getting in this week. Now on to the field changes, as John is another withdraw. John Merrick gets in because of that. Andres Romero had gotten in on the past champion status, but is not playing. Tim Herron gets his spot. Arjun Atwal gets a sponsor's exemption. We saw him a couple of weeks ago in Bermuda. He made the cut. Jason Gore is not playing. And Bo Van Pelt, who's using a career money exemption this year. You can only use one of them. He's using it this year. Looks like he can't play this week or is not playing. And Derek Ernst, who we saw a couple of weeks ago, he gets in the field. So that does it for our field changes. The next one we're going to have is the Monday qualifiers, up in just 1 second. Okay, on to the Monday qualifiers. Some interesting ones this week, some new names that I had to look up. And, of course, one blast from the past that we get. I shouldn't say of course, but normally we get at least one name that we recognize. First one that took the medalist honors, Henry Chung. Really can't find much about this guy. All I can find is that he graduated college out of the University of San Francisco maybe a year and a half or two ago, in May of 2018. Hasn't been around, but Monday qualifies here. Gonna get a chance to play. You never know what'll happen. Cole Miller is next, a 24-year-old from Penn State. He's been playing his golf on the Canadian Tour. He didn't make the top 10, so as we just kind of talked about with Grayson Sigg, who got status on the Korn Ferry Tour via the Canadian Tour. Not the case here with Cole Miller, but hey, he Monday qualifies in. Kyle Reifers, who when I first started jumping in was on the PGA Tour full time, and this was about 3 years ago now, and has been bouncing around and gets a start here. And Matt Atkins, a 28-year-old who's playing his golf mostly on the Korn Ferry Tour this year and last year. He ranked 132nd, so hopefully get a few starts there this year. May have to do some more Monday qualifying, but hey, might not have to if he goes out and wins this week, because you never know, of course. All right, so moving on to the last segment before I bring in Matt Jones for our statistical breakdown this week. We're going to go about, I'm going to say about 15, maybe 17 minutes as I look here. And this one, we're heading up around the 10-minute mark, so about 25 minutes. Hopefully you guys enjoy the short-form podcast. So my opening odds and salary discussion, I try and do it each week. I try and do a very short, quick review of last week. Last week I talked about Victor Hovland at 18-1. Obviously, that didn't pan out for me. He missed the cut. Pat Perez at 61-1, though, panned out. I believe he ended up with a top 10, if I'm not mistaken. At least that's what I had written down. But you know me and my notes sometimes don't always get along. But yep, Patty Perez did end up in a tie for 8th, and so that would have been a nice top 10 bet. And then Henrik Norlander tied for 41st. He was my 225-1 to win bet. But maybe if you could found him to make the cut plus 2 or 300, that might have been a good bet for you. No other bet would have cashed. There's no top 40 bet or anything like that. Just a bet to make the cut. So not a bad showing last week as I look to hit my first winner in a little while in this picking 3 from 3 different price ranges. This week I'm going to go with Scotty Scheffler at 28-1 to win. 28-1 to win. The reason why I'm picking him is because, sure, I believe Webb Simpson is much more likely to win the golf tournament, but at 8-1, it seems a little short. And if Webb comes out because he hasn't played in maybe a month or so, maybe a little over, comes out a little sluggish, maybe you can get a better line on that after round 1, say 10 or 12 to 1. Certainly sounds better. So I turn to Scotty Scheffler, as I also feel that 14 to 1 for Billy Horschel, who, sure, he's played good, don't get me wrong. Just seems a little short. Seems like we might be able to wait on it. Where Scotty Scheffler at 28 to 1 seems pretty decent. Played very good out in Bermuda, which is, believe it or not too far away from St. Simons, Georgia, and Sea Island, Georgia, where they're playing this week. So Scotty Scheffler, 28 to 1 to win. Ryan Armour, the 90-80 club guy, and he hit 90% of his fairways and 80% of his greens here on the Seaside course at the obviously at the Sea Island Resort. So 66 to 1 to win for Ryan Armour. Maybe a little short there. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, but still hitting the ball well. He hit over 75% of his greens last week as well, so trending in the right direction. And the ever volatile Luke List we just saw pop at the Houston Open a couple of weeks ago, 125 to 1 to win for Luke List, who comes here, has had some success with a top 10 in the last couple of years, maybe found his game again, and certainly against a very weak field. If Luke List could find the putter for a week and keep the ball in play, he's very good with his wedges, so could be in contention this week. That covers my 3 opening odds and salary discussion. Of course, if you're looking for more, depending on when you're listening to this should come out Tuesday morning. You'll get to tune in on Tuesday night at 8:30. A little bit of a change in time due to something scheduling in mind. So Ben has nicely changed to Tuesday, 8:30. So tonight at 8:30 p.m., unless you're listening at a different time, that will be our free Live Before Lock show. Not going to be quite before Live Before Lock this week. I apologize. But still, we'll be breaking it down and going into more detail specifically about the tournament this week and what we've got on tap for the next couple. So stay tuned for the segment with Matt Jones right after this. But until next time, which might not be for this specific podcast at least, until a tournament, listen to me, Jesus Louises, Tournament of Champions just after the turn of the new year, one of my favorites. So while I may be gone for a month or so, at least I come back with one of my favorites. Again, thanks everybody for joining. Hope you guys have liked the introduction of these podcasts. And now that I have a bunch of time, a month and a half in between, if you'd like to hear something different on these, hear a little bit more, hear a little bit less, let me know. Perfect time to start suggesting things as we get looking towards next year. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, and good luck this week at the RSM Classic. All right, everybody, welcome back to the second segment here of Shot 3 from the Tee. I'm joined by my co-host for the segment, Matt Jones, who is a little under the weather, but I'm going to give him all the credit in the world. He's here to join us at Matt Jones TFR on Twitter. Matt, besides you being sick, what's happening, man?
Oh, not much. I told you, I did my injury reporting. I was questionable, but got some tea in me, and I'm ready to rock. So hopefully we'll pick some good guys this week and not completely ignore the winner, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Brendan Todd obviously is going to win again. I've talked about him a couple of times on my first couple of segments. It's just hard to ignore him right now, that's for sure. So I appreciate the candidness and the injury reporting. I know that's always a hot topic around every single DFS sport. It seems like on a nightly basis for NBA, a weekly basis for the NFL and PGA. Hopefully, as time marches on, we'll get better though. So let's dive into the stats. And I mentioned last night on the opening tee pod that under 150 yards this week is so prominent, extremely prominent. I brought it up with you, so let's start there. I will give you a couple of names off the top, and I took the proximity stats, from last year, and just took under 125 and 125 to 150, and just averaged it out, averaged their yearly ranking. And Stuart Sink was number 1. Followed by Roberto Castro as number 2. And then hot off the second place finish is Vaughn Taylor at number 3. He is really good from under 150. Did either of those three names pop over on your side? I'll give you a couple more, which probably show up on your screener, but let's start with these three.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely speaking my language when it comes to Stuart Sink. He's one of my boys, so
That's what I like to hear. All right.
definitely on board with that. Yeah, no, I think all those guys definitely make sense. And I think just from watching and understanding how they play, I think that they both make plenty of sense. So, or all three of them, sorry, make plenty of sense. So yeah, I think that works.
Yeah, and then the fourth and fifth guy, which I said you'd probably show up, Adam Hadwin. He's always pretty good in proximity. For him, it always comes down to his putter and whether you catch him on a hot putter or not. And then the other name that I want to throw at you, see if he showed up on your screen, Ryan Armour. I mean, this guy, ready for this? He was in the 90-80 club at this tournament last year. 90% of his fairways and 80% of his greens. Crazy. Had a really good ball striking week, it seemed, last week by the stats. What do you make of Armour? He's won one of these events in the fall circuit in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think he's top 20 in both of those from what I'm looking at. So definitely makes quite a bit of sense. Do you have any Jimmy Furyk takes? He seemed to be popping in this range as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he sure was. Under 125. I have him as the third best, and this is where statistics get kind of skewed when you're looking at purely proximity numbers from 25-yard distances. He's like 126 from 125 to 150. Do you think that's more noise than it is anything else? Like, how can he be legitimately one of the best 125? I mean, I guess maybe under 100 yards, or if we went to like under 75 yards. Do you have any of those stats, or did you look at that? Or what do you make of the disparity between the two numbers I just gave you about Furyk?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have him 75 to 100. I have him 24th. Then he's first in 100 to 125, and then he's 35th in 125 to 150.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. It's kind of all over the place, unless he has like just dialed in that one club that's like his 112 or whatever. It's like it's very odd to see these discrepancies, which I've talked about it on my show before too. Like that's always what gives me a little pause in using these numbers. But I do think that you can definitely spot some trends that'll be useful looking through these numbers for sure.
Definitely. So Jim Furyk also on the screener. It looks like top 20 between the averages of what I saw. So like both of those. All right, let's move on to our next stat that we're looking at. And this is It's a dual course, but it's a dual course tournament, as I've mentioned a couple of times. Seaside course is what we're focused on. We do have some strokes gain data. And when you look over the last couple of years, you look at Howell last year, Austin Cook the year before that, even if you want to draft back a year further, it looks like, and I believe that was, Kevin Kisner was in 2015, Mackenzie Hughes was in 2016. The one trait that I feel about all of these guys is they're not overly long off the tee. The longest was Charles Howell. He ranked 32nd last year, actually, in driving distance. But all got hot with their irons, which some of them are good irons, but all of them are good putters or got hot with their putter. So irons, obviously a second shot course. Strokes gain approach important. Obviously, with as many fairways as these guys are hitting this week, it's one of the highest percentage fairways hit of the year. As I just mentioned, Ryan Armour hitting about 95% last year. Second shot course, what do you have for strokes gained on your side for guys that are standing out?
Yeah, just in general, I think that it's not necessarily like a total club down spot, but definitely a little bit lower driving distance in general on average. And like you said, the guys who are scoring in like the top quarter of DraftKings points are hitting like 80% of their greens.
Yep.
Which is a little bit high compared to most courses we'll see. 75 isn't that odd, but 80% I think is kind of a lot. As far as just courses like this in general for the splits that we've been looking at, Kevin Chappell at 7,100. Obviously, we haven't. He was among the missing for a little bit there.
Yep, sure was.
But he during his sort of career in general, he hits more fairways on these types of tracks. He hits more greens regulation. He has more strokes gained tee to green. And he missed a cut in Houston, but he just lost everything on the greens, which, as you mentioned, it would be important here. But I think he's a guy who's probably just still getting his sea legs under him, and could pop if he's going to hit some greens for us here.
Yeah, and it looked pretty decent last week. I think he did sneak to the weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? Did he miss that? End up missing the cut on the number? I can't remember. I'm looking.
I can't remember. But another guy, while you check on that, Dylan Fratelli is a guy who popped in this as well. Similar splits. Hits way more greens in regulation. I think this is the kind of track that sets up better for him than a longer course as far as his stats have gone over the past 4 or 5 years. So, and he played pretty well. He had a couple of top 25s, I think, over in Asia. So this is his first start back since then. So we'll see.
Chappell ended up making the cut last week, and the numbers looked pretty decent, actually. Even on the putting side, which is definitely a good sign. I think this course sets up much better. Chappell's not great off the tee. He's never been that great off the tee. It's been his second shot that's been his strength. So it'll be interesting to see him utilize those fairways. At least the ability to hit the fairways a lot easier this week. And he's popped a couple of times on this golf course. He had that big lead, and Kevin Kisner ended up winning that year. And actually, Dylan Fratelli, this is only going to go add into your point, but he snuck in last week. He actually got a T11, so he played really well. It looks like he putted well. And it's a similar yardage course to what they played last week. Again, much easier off the tee. Again, I like guys that played well last week, and Dylan Fratelli was certainly one of them. So I like to correlate that for sure. Any other numbers, any other guys besides Chappell and Fratelli?
All the way at the top, Webb is obviously performs better on these shorter courses. He averages about 4.5 strokes gained tee to green on shorter courses, and just over 3 on longer courses. So another big positive split. Not that that's terribly surprising, but
yeah. And it's interesting. I thought about this today, and I'm like, man, Webb's gonna show up again, and Webb's always gonna show up. And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, a lot of these courses during this fall circuit seem to be the shorter courses as well, and that's what he's playing in, and he always ends up in the top 10 in these fields because he's likely most of the time the best player, and we get that this week. So maybe a little bit there, but that all just goes to say that that's a reason to play him rather than to not play him. He had that one withdrawal here a couple of years ago. I don't recall what that was about. I don't remember if it was pre-tournament. I feel like it was in tournament.
Yeah, I think it was. Somebody was tweeting about it earlier and brought up those cruel memories. So yeah, I did remember that during the day today.
I'm almost positive. I can almost assure you I had a lot of allocation to Webb at this type of event. Probably something similar to what I had Victor Hovland last week, who decided to implode there at the cut line, which I'm sure you're following. Okay, so any other names that you want to throw out? I've got a couple from last week that, like you said, a lot of you got to be hitting 80% of your greens, almost even 80% of your fairways as well. The 80-80 club, which we talked about a little last week, there's going to be plenty of guys that are in the 80-80 club this week. Any other guys before I give you my last few?
No, hit me with them.
Okay. 2 weeks in a row now, and maybe last week was the week to jump on him, but 81% of his greens with 50% of his fairways, which we know that's going to be better this week, is Robert Streb. 2 eagles on the week and 17 birdies, so a pretty good week. And then Rory Sabatini, no surprise, 80.6% of his greens as well. Putted terribly, finished in 33rd. So Robert Streb, Rory Sabatini, the only two guys to finish above Brendan Todd, who, if he had hit 18, would have tied with them, but I ended up missing the 72nd hole green. Got up and down, obviously. Okay, and one more name, just because I saw it there. Robbie Shelton is the third one. Hit 78% of his greens. So throw out Brendan Todd. He doesn't count because he's on a heater. Any of those three names interest you?
Yeah, Robbie Shelton, I think, makes a fair bit of sense. He's been... I guess he didn't play particularly well at Bermuda, but he had a couple of good starts in October as well. So he's definitely a guy that I think we could see maybe coming back on the upswing here. He was, I guess, 8 under on the par fours last week too, which is a pretty good number there. So yeah, I like him quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Anything quickly on par fours, the one thing I didn't mention, par fours under 450 yards. Did you happen to find anything on that data?
Yeah, Lanto popped in that. He's first in strokes gained par fours over the past 24 rounds in my, how I'm slicing it up. Obviously has played well this fall so far. I think he has 6 top 20s just in the fall.
It's insane.
Which is pretty absurd considering there's been like 6 or 7 events probably.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's definitely a guy that piqued my interest. Super cheap dart throw, Josh Teeter. It's a small sample, but he's 7th in the strokes gained par fours that I was looking at. And he played pretty well down in Bermuda. I think he had a 10th or 11th place finish. So he's a guy, again, not talking safe cash plays here, but just maybe a GPP dart throw there.
You know what's interesting about Teeter is, too, he finished the season off really nicely and just missed out. It was one of those last few guys out. He's playing out of the really difficult 125 to 150 category. Alex Noren's in that category. These are the guys, they actually have worse status than the new Korn Ferry grads. So think about it. There's 50 of those guys. Then you got the normal PGA Tour golfers, normal guys like Rory McIlroy. He's not really normal. He's superhuman. But just let's talk about the better players. They don't get in a lot of fields. So got to make the most of it. So I like that call with Josh Teeter there a lot to end it. So the reason why I brought that up, most of the par fours, almost all of them except for one, are under 450 yards. So just want to talk about that. So, Matt, thanks for joining, even though you were a little under the weather here. And this is our last one until the first of the year. Probably around the first of the year. Tournament of Champions, we don't really have anything in between then. So, Matt, I'm sure I'll talk to you before then. We chat on a fairly regularly basis. But I guess for the pod, have a good Christmas and happy holidays.
Yeah, for sure, man. You too. It's been fun. I'm looking forward to the quote unquote real season.
Yeah, right. Starting with the Tournament of Champions. So, Matt, thanks again, and we will see you guys on the other side. Cheers.